This is Goku-san, DBZ, and welcome back. This is a special top 10 list. This is a top 10 list, 10 of my personal favorite directors slash creators and writers of all time. Some projects they were more like executive producers and writers on, and this will include both animation as well as live action. So with that said, and just so you know, 7 of the directors will be mainly specifically specialized in the field of course, live action, and 3 slots will be held by particular individuals that specialized in the field of animation. We have 1 from Japan and 2 from America, 1 specialized in 2D and 1 specialized in 3D. So with that said, coming in at number 10 is a director that I feel needs really no introduction. He is a very creative mind. He is actually the co-director of course, all of the Indiana Jones films. And he also was director of course, the original Star Wars film. He directed the 3 Star Wars prequels, which, of course, I am a defender of the prequels, so I actually have nothing against them. He is also the director of a classic from the 70s, which gave a good career starter to a young actor named Harrison Ford. That movie was called American Graffiti. Uh, Coming at number 10 is the director, though he's not done much now, but he's responsible, of course, also for creating the Star Wars universe. And of course, coming at number 10 is George Lucas. I know a lot of people don't think of him as a director, more as a creator of sorts. But, in my personal opinion, I feel that George Lucas deserves a lot more respect than he gets, unfortunately. It is sad that he doesn't get more respect than he does. And I think that needs a change, in my personal opinion, but to each their own. Also, coming in at number 9 is another director that needs, I feel, no introduction. He is the creator, one of the greatest creators of 2D animation of all time. He created some true classics, such as, obviously, he originally worked for Disney, then left Disney back in the 80s. He was responsible for some of the greatest non-Disney animated films of all time, such as obviously films I believe you all know, such as Anastasia, as well as Secret of NIMH, of course, An American Tail, and many others. And of course, coming at number 9, that would be Don Bluth, which is, I feel, of course, one of the greatest 2D anime creators of all time, and deserves more respect than he gets. Coming in at number 8 is a director a lot of times people overlook, though. People forget he has done some great films, and I think he has really revived his career. He is somebody who I have actually seen every film that he has directed. And I can't say that about many. I've seen all 13 of the films he's directed, and the 3 films that he was co-producer on. Coming at number 8 is M. Night Shyamalan, which, of course, as I've said before now, I'm a pretty big fan and big supporter of M. Night. I always have been. Yeah, I agree. He did some pretty bad movies, such as The Happening, in my opinion, is maybe his worst. After Earth, close, probably second worst. Uh, and yeah, I'm not a big fan of The Last Airbender, but I never saw the animated show, so I don't hate it as much as a lot of people do. Coming in at number... Oh boy. Coming in at number 7 is definitely going to be a somewhat controversial pick. Actually, it's a tie, to be fair. One of the two in the tie is controversial, and the other one not so much. First, the non-controversial one, tied at number 7, is of course responsible for the original Spider-Man trilogy. He is responsible for great classics like The Evil Dead, and he is responsible for movies which I thoroughly enjoy, like Oz the Grand Powerful, and many other films I've seen from him. Tied at number 7 is, of course, Sam Raimi, which I've always been a fan of Sam Raimi films. I've always enjoyed his, like, weird sense of humor, and I appreciate it. Probably more than some people do out there. Also tied with him at number 7 is the original co-founder of Pixar. He has now recently been named head over studio, animation studio. I believe it was either Universal or Warner Brothers. I forget which. He, of course, is the one responsible for Toy Story 1, 2, and 3. He co wrote the script for Toy Story 4 before he was fired by Bob Iger and, of course, uh, vice president over Disney. I forget the vice president's name now. But, anyways, tied at number 7, very controversial decision, I know, but still, he had a great imagination. He also created great stories, such as, of course, Inside Out. And that is, of course, John Lasseter, tied at number 7 slot. Coming in at number 6 is a modern day director I feel that needs no introduction. He has done some of my actually all time favorite horror films. He did, of course, the first 2 of the Insidious films, which are great films. He of course, was executive producer, writer and stuff, worked on Insidious Chapter 3 as well as Insidious The Last Key. He also, of course, directed The Conjuring 1 and 2. He worked as executive producer on Annabelle Creation as well as The Nun. And he, of course, in more recent time did an action film, Fast and the Furious 7. And, of course, the most recent film he did was, in my opinion, the best of the DCEU films, Aquaman. And that is James Wan, comes in number 6. And definitely, I feel there's still a great future ahead of James Wan. Coming in at number 5 is another director I feel that really doesn't need too much of an introduction just because he's so well known. He's done so many great movies over the years. He did Gladiator. He created the Alien franchise with Alien. He did Alien Covenant, which I think is superb. It was one of my favorite movies the year it came out. He did The Martian, another one of my favorite movies the year it came out. He did Prometheus, which I feel is highly underrated, great science fiction film. And of course, that is none other than Ridley Scott, comes in at number 5. Always been a fan of Ridley Scott. I've been following him for his work for probably now, I don't know, about 18 years or so. I've been watching Ridley Scott films with a real big interest and enjoyment of his work. Coming in at number 4 is probably one of the most artsy directors of all time, and he truly was ahead of his time in a way he thought about things. He was definitely very much cared about the art form and everything when it comes to his movies. He directed, of course, a film that many people love to this day based on Stephen King work, though Stephen King himself absolutely despised the movie, The Shining. Though, in my personal opinion of films he has worked on, I feel his best movie of all time, at least for me personally, and given how heavily influential it's been, heck, it influenced Rob Zombie with his music video to his song Never Gonna Stop, which is a great song, I might add. But the movie is superb. It is called A Clockwork Orange. And I do highly recommend it to anyone who is a fan of like cult classics. Clockwork Orange is definitely a great movie to watch, and it will make you use your brain and think about things. That's one thing I liked about this specific director. And of course, coming at number 4 is the great late Stanley Kubrick. I feel more people really need to check out his work if you haven't. Stanley Kubrick really was a master of his art form. Coming in at number 3, it's the master of anime. Even though my favorite anime artist of all time, of course, and responsible for my favorite anime show of all time, Akira Toriyama, the greatest director, anime director of all time, and made the greatest imagination of all time in anime, greater than that of even Akira Toriyama in Gonzo. That is, of course, the great man himself, more or less the one who started Studio Ghibli, who is responsible for, in my opinion, 5 of the greatest anime movies of all time. Spirited Away, Castle in the Sky, Kiki's Delivery Service, Princess Mononoke, as well as not so action-based, but still a great story overall, Whisper of the Heart. And that is the great genius himself at number 3, Hayao Miyazaki, which of course was good friends with actually John Lasseter for quite a few years. Lasseter was even responsible for convincing Hayao Miyazaki to bring Studio Ghibli films to America and do English dubs, with good quality dubs, I might add. So I want to say, really, because of introducing me to Studio Ghibli and great movies that will tear you up on the inside emotionally, also he was influenced, or rather Studio Ghibli, a great masterpiece called Grave of the Fireflies. If you've never seen it, just know it will definitely make you see things from World War II time period from the Japanese perspective and see how depressing and how gut-wrenching things were over there during that time period. And it is refreshing when you see some from a different perspective. I mean, Hayao Miyazaki was old enough to remember that time period. He was a kid, but he was around during World War II, so he remembers what things were like in the culture back then. Coming in at number 2, needs no introduction. He is responsible for more or less revolutionizing and making stop motion the great masterpieces that it is today. He is responsible more or less for things like James and the Giant Peach, Frankenweenie. His studio is responsible for great films such as Kubo and the Two Strings, Coraline, Corpse Bride, also Nightmare Before Christmas, creator of course, classic 1989 Batman, as well as Beetlejuice, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and many other great films. Coming in number 2 is, of course, Tim Burton. He was he's a great master of the art form, and he really helped revolutionize and help influence an entire generation of goth culture and goth artistry and many elements. And that's one thing I always liked about none other than, of course, Tim Burton. Number 1, though, needs no introduction, obviously. Definitely. He was good friends with Stanley Kubrick. He's good friends with also George Lucas. He is really the one responsible for the career of John Williams, like Tim Burton was really responsible for Danny Elfman's career, along with maybe a little bit of also Sam Raimi. But this man is a true master, and that is Steven Spielberg, responsible for some of the greatest movies of all time, of course. He is responsible for, Jaws, Jurassic Park. He's responsible for E.T. He is responsible for Back to the Future, which is one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time. Also, of course, co-director of all of the Indiana Jones films. And, of course, he's directing Indiana Jones 5. Fun fact. And there's too many more movies to name off, in my opinion, when it comes to someone like Steven Spielberg, who was revolutionary for his time and really paved the way for many great films in cinema. Modern films, he did great ones, such as, I feel, the underrated The BFG. And, of course, we cannot forget Lincoln, a true modern masterpiece. With that said, these are, in my opinion, 10 of the greatest directors / creative minds in cinema history, in animation and live action. So, leave a comment below. Tell me who some of your favorite directors are of all time of film, in animation and live action. Anyways, I'll see everyone next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.